Good morning, everyone. I am Yuvraj Singh, the president of JSPF and also a third year student of the BCom Honors program. It gives me immense pleasure to embark on the final day of the third edition of the GFC. It's 14th November, the birthday of Jawaharlal Nehru. Jawaharlal Nehru, an economic modernist who believed that the rapid industrialization was the most effective way to win the battle against mass poverty. The day is also marked as Children's Day. It's a day to celebrate the power of youth. It's correctly said by Franklin D. Roosevelt that we cannot always build the future for our youth, but what we can build is our youth for the future. The youth of a nation is brimming with untapped potential that can be polished and utilized to bring in advancements in every sphere. Indian history is full of youth icons that are example of the youth power in a country and also a great source of inspirations for many. It is no doubt that every young individual wants a great career and is willing to contribute his behalf towards the development of the nation. The youth can contribute to India's success and progress only if they are equipped with skills and knowledge. It is a great day to show you all how talented the youth of this country are. We have an entire day planned for many events which are student led. The 2021 edition of the Global Finance Conclave, hosted by the Jindal School of Banking and Finance, was to find answers to this question from scholars based on their rigorous academic research, from practitioners based on their grip of the evolving industry, from government officials based on their foresight of policy making, and from civil society activists based on their understanding of the complexities of our society. I would like to hand over to Devna to speak about the highlights of the day ahead, where we can see our youth shining their enormous power of knowledge.
Thank you so much, Yuvraj, for that wonderful insight on Children's Day. Good morning, everyone. I am Devna Khandelwal, the Vice President of Jindal School of Banking and Finance. Planned for today are 5 student-led competitions, which include our signature debate called Arthavivada, GFC trivia that tests one knowledge, mental equity, and the reflexes, the Globe, which is hosted by the Finance and Accounting Society to test knowledge about policies on taxing, Double Agent, which testifies the philosophy of understanding diverse perspectives before arriving on a conclusion, and Council of Cons, which is all about the logical reasoning in context of world of white collar crime. These events have been curated around topics like finance, economics, policies, and marketing. Each event will test the participants on their mental equity along with the understanding of fundamentals in the world of commerce. But before we start the events, we thank the committee heads, the committee coordinators, student leaders, and all the members of the committees who worked tirelessly to make this event a success. It wouldn't have been possible without their sheer dedication and support that our volunteers have shown to make this conclave a success. I hereby welcome you all to the final day of the third edition of Global Finance Conclave. Here's hoping that this experience turns out to be full of excitement and learning. Thank you.
I'm Maitri Ramdas, your moderator for today, and would like to take this opportunity to introduce our distinguished judges. Professor Ruchira Sen from Jindal School of Journalism and Communication is with us here today. Professor Pulkit from Jindal School of Business and Finance, and Professor Tritiman Gupta from Jindal School of Government and Public Policy are also here with us today. Thank you, judges, for taking your time out of your busy schedules for being with us here today. I move on to introduce our debate teams. We have from National Institute of Technology, Jamshedpur, Team Zero Alis, led by Ms. Tanvi. From Symbiosis Institute of Business Management, Bengaluru, we have Team Ragnarok, led by Mr. Ayush Sharma. From Shriram College of Commerce, Delhi University, we have Team Panthers, led by Shrestha Agarwal. And our home team from OP Jindal Global University, we have Team Surplus, led by Ms. Sanjana Jain. Today, we are here for the semi-final and final round of the Arthavivada. Teams will engage in discord on topics around economics, finance, and current affairs. The debate will flow in parliamentary format of debate. This format being, the first speaker from each of the teams will get 4 minutes of speaking time, team affirmative followed by team opposition. Next, the second speakers from both of these teams will get 3 minutes of speaking time, followed by a whip or rebuttal round of 2 minutes for each team. This will be followed by a conclusion round where each team will get a minute to conclude their argument. Participants, I request you to change your names as has been instructed to you. Our first debate for today will be on the topic, the elimination of barriers in the labor market depresses wages and floods the marketplace with workers. This debate will take place between Team Ragnarok and Team Panthers, who are Team Opposition and Team Affirmative, respectively. This debate will commence now. Can these teams please rename themselves as instructed? Judges, we are now ready to begin. Our timekeeper for this debate is Dia Jain. Participants will be notified when they have a minute of speaking time left and when their time is up by way of the chat box. We will begin this debate in 4, 3, 2, 1. Speaker 1, Team Affirmative, you have the floor.
Good morning, esteemed judges, fellow opponents, and my dear friends. Today, representing Team Panthers, I, Tushar Goswami, would like to speak for a motion on the topic, the elimination of barriers in the labor market depresses wages and floods the marketplace with workers. Labor market firstly refer to the supply and demand for labor, in which employees provide the supply and employers provide the demand. But there can be several barriers to entry into the labor markets, such as language barriers, educational qualifications, gender, age group, religion, government regulations, experience, etc., to name a few. But when these barriers are removed or are overcome, there will be an increase in the supply of laborers, which will depress wages. I would like to justify my argument with the simple rule of demand and supply. If we consider the factor market, wages are determined with the help of demand and supply of laborers. So when there will be a large influx of laborers in an economy, as a result of removing labor market barriers, the wages are bound to depress, considering large supply of laborers with a minimal or zero increase in demand, because the bargaining power of the laborers will decrease and the employers are likely to give the jobs to those demanding less wages. For instance, if we consider an example, suppose there is a person who is seeking a laborer and he is ready to pay 100 rupees as wage. Now, suppose that for this purpose, there are 3 persons who are ready to take up this job, and out of the 3 persons, the first person or the first laborer, he is asking that he should be paid 130 rupees as wage for the purpose of doing this job. There is the second laborer who is ready to work at 100 rupees as wage, and then there comes a third laborer who is even ready to work with as low as 80 rupees as wage. So this is a simple instinct that the person who is seeking one laborer would likely employ the third person who is asking as low as 80 rupees as wage. So this example will clearly illustrate that when the supply of laborers are high, keeping the other factors constant, the wages are bound to go down. Also, in certain states in India, the state governments have imposed several restrictions on jobs. That is, a major chunk of the state government jobs and even the private sector jobs have been reserved for the domiciles from their own states. For example, few months back, the Haryana government notified a law providing 75% reservation for locals in the private sector jobs, offering a monthly salary of less than 30,000 with effect from January 15 next year. Now, suppose hypothetically speaking, if we assume that these barriers are removed by the respective state governments, so this will encourage people from every nook and corner of the country to take up jobs in these states where these barriers are removed. So obviously this will flood the labor market with more and more number of workers, and obviously the wages are bound to go down. Moreover, an increase in immigration to a country can also grow the labor supply and potentially depress wages, particularly if newly arrived workers are willing to accept lower pay. With this, I'd like to conclude my part of the argument. Thank you very much.
A very good evening, good morning to all everyone. Am I audible and visible?
Yes.
Yes. So I would like to begin my case by posing everyone a single question. Let me ask you everyone. Consider that you have applied for a job and your CV doesn't get selected. Not because you don't have skills, but because of a barrier of caste you belong to. Or say because you are a fresher to an experienced person and you are the creamy layer of the corporate echelons, and they believe that you are not compatible with them. How ludicrous do you feel, my friend? So here I am, thanking the institution for providing me the opportunity to speak, where I believe that the elimination of the barrier doesn't augur towards depressing the wage in the society, or to say that it is just flooding the market with excess of labor. Rather, I believe contrary. It is always about looking at the half glass full rather when we are looking at the half glass empty. It is about expanding the pie and not about when we are adding more ingredients to the base rather than just dividing the same old base into more smaller parts. Where in the later one, when we are more definitive about receiving a lower share of the total, while our focus should be expanding the total. When we are talking about labor market, when we are talking about labor force, when we are talking about the demand and supply here, let us all get into the concept of the production possibility curve, which we may have encountered, might be in class 11 and 12 in economics, where we are talking about expanding the frontier to the outwards rather than allocating the resources within the frontier. The key point here, my dear friends, is where the resource lies about the human resource, which is very crucial and it is the most indispensable force of the human competence. We need to focus here on the labor inclusivity about the workforce participation than the excess labor availability that we are rather talking about. So I would like to grab your attention to the facts of the OECD report, according to which in the US there are 25 million extra workers, which will be needed by the 2030 to sustain an economic growth. If we talk about in Europe, we are looking at a potential shortfall of around 35 million workers, where 15% of the total labor demand is by 2050. So it is about creating an equal opportunity rather than just receiving an equal outcome, which just saturates the labor market. So with all this, and when we are talking about the elimination of barriers that exist in the labor market, I would like to put forward certain possible scenarios in front of you all. So here we are talking about more opportunities to be created. It's about creating more equal opportunity and it is about the survival of the fittest. If we look to envision ourselves in the light of more human resource capabilities that we are endowed in the society, we are all quite well known that if we are talking about economics, we can import the machines, we can import the equipment, but we are not, when we are talking about the human resources and the skills, it is unique. And if we talk about the wage rate getting depressed in an unsatisfied, then it is we are talking about an unsatisfied labor force, and we are left with an unemployed worker, and we are not taking the gap of the potential labor force. So, conclusively, my dear friends, I would like to say that it is a time of artificial intelligence, it is a time of machine learning, and here we are to exploit the plethora of the opportunities. We are here to exploit and we are here to train and skill, and it is all about the race of the survival of the fittest. And this is all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker 1. Speaker 2 from Team Affirmative, you have the floor.
Good morning to one and all present here. To add on to what my associate Tushar Goswami already mentioned, I would like to speak for the motion that eliminating barriers in the labor market will lead to depression of the wages as well as flooding the marketplace with workers. I would like to justify this particular statement by a slightly different perspective, which is that of a business firm. The sole objective of any particular business enterprise is to ensure that the right kind of jobs are provided to the right kind of people, which ultimately leads to the development and success of any particular business organization. We also tend to have certain barriers in terms of qualification levels, education levels, so that the right kind of employees are present in a particular organization. However, if it so happens, particularly in the unskilled labor market, which comprises approximately 94% of the workforce in India, if it so happens that the barriers in this labor market are eliminated, then it only increases burden on the part of the company, which makes it even more difficult for them to find reliable and efficient employees from a mass pool of candidates. Besides, talking about immigration, if a country allows the citizens of other country to enter a particular nation and then also removes the barriers to the labor market, then it will obviously increase the influx of workers. But on a more, if we go on a particular detail level, it will also create feelings of inequality and injustice among the original residents of that country, because there is a high possibility that the immigrants may be ready to accept lower wages. This will also create a sort of injustice and feelings of discontentment for the government as well. If there are certain barriers in the labor market, then it enables the companies to ensure that the right kind of people are able to be employed and thereby resulting in the success of the organization. Besides, in the particular age of AI and technology, where all the mundane jobs are being taken away by automation, we do know that what we require right now is diversity in the workforce. We need diversity in skills of the workforce. However, particularly speaking about the unskilled labor market, if it so happens that barriers are eliminated, then majority of the chunk of population is highly relatable that they are going to rely more on the lower workforce segment. Now, what this will do is that eventually, when mundane jobs like maybe guarding a post office or something are replaced by automation, it will create mass unemployment and eventually create a very important problem in the future development of the nation. So with this, I would like to rest my case, but definitely not my cause. Thank you.
Speaker 2, Team Opposition, you now have the floor.
Yes, so good morning, one and all. Today I'm here to take the opposition stance and adding on to Speaker 1's point. So I would like to begin by saying that for generations now, a college education has been as the best path to a good job. The conventional wisdom has gone something like this: get into a good school, study hard, and start your career when you get out. So this has been a pathway along all these ways, and like my opposition friend has said as well, that the firm point of view says that okay, we need a good candidate. I'm just saying that when we increase the number of people applying for a job, the possibility of getting that perfect fit, the best fit, increases, and significantly you are at a position where you are likely to get a perfect candidate for your job. And one more fact I would like to throw here: 8% of the Indians actually graduates from high school. So just take that number. And so are we standing on a point where we are saying that we only give the chances to that 8% and not the leftover 92%, where they have the same potential, the same power to show the world that okay, they are worth, and they can prove what they are actually worth of. So my stance here stands that we give opportunity to everybody, and everyone deserves it, no matter from what gender they are from what caste they are from what sex they are from. So this all race has to end into a more happy and friendly competitive space, where even the more impact is given to employees, and then on the similar lines, the better wages possibilities increases. And it's not just a single idea. It is possibly, according to my eyes, the future, and this will lead us to a world where by even by according to OECD, by 2030 we will lead to a non-competitive, non-bounded environment where the government or the firms will not discriminate, and we still see deaf and dumb people there at many service stations and many places. They're trying to fit in, and we are letting them fit in because we have the floor and we can raise our arms and just take them in. So that would be all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Team Affirmative, you now have the floor for your rebuttal round. Any counter arguments you may present now.
So Team Opposition did mention that if it so happens that barriers are removed and more number of people do enter the labor market, then it will create equal opportunities and the wages are not likely to depress. But what about the unskilled labor market, which comprises major portion of the Indian economy? Because as per the report, as per the Human Development Report of 2020, approximately 4 out of 5 laborers are actually unskilled. And when it comes to the unskilled labor market, removing barriers, because having a certain amount of barriers will, according to us, it won't play a very important role in sort of determining the wages. It's purely a game of demand and supply in that particular notion. So if Team Opposition could justify this particular statement. Thank you.
Team Opposition, you might present your counter arguments.
All right. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to start by asking a few questions. Firstly, Mr. Goswami mentioned that basically he mentioned many barriers, but basically talked about economics. So let me remind him that when prices go down, I mean when the supplies goes up, yes, the prices go down, but one more important element is there, that's the demand. So by economics, when prices go down, demands go up. So in the logic, the demand is actually increasing for the labor force when there are more people going on the lower level, on the price point. Second, you also mentioned that the old factors are constant, which are not, because we are human and we're talking about human people. And finally, there was a mention of Haryana government giving the registrations for people above 30,000, but the actual number is above 50,000. Below 50,000 monthly salary, there is a reservation. So there's a little, I would like to course correction due to the Mr. Goswami. Second, Mr. Agarwal mentioned about the employer barrier barriers from the employer's point of view. And I think what he meant was the required qualifications, not the barriers, because you cannot expect a woodcutter to apply for a driver's job. So it's about the capability. It's about the capability you can enter or not about the job requirement. Finally, he also mentioned about Western people and immigrants going there and increasing the labor force. Well, there's a lot of demand in those countries, and a most recent UK energy crisis comes to mind. And finally, talking about the AI, it also happened in the past, as you mentioned, that AI will cause a mass employment, but unemployment, that's not the case, because just like it happened when automation came up and the industrialization came up, it shifted the jobs, not killed the jobs. And so finally mentioning about the unskilled part, which he mentioned that 4 out of 5 people are unskilled. Well, there are a lot of investment done from the employer's point of view to actually skill the labor force according to their demand. So it's not really about the barriers, but about the intent of the employers. So concluding my argument, thank you so much. These are all the questions I have. Thank you.
Team Affirmative, would you like to use your speaking time left?
Yes. Thank you very much. Speaker 3, firstly, I'd like to say that you mentioned about the demand supply thing that I spoke in my part. So firstly, you see, if you consider immigration, say there is this Afghanistan crisis really happening. So suppose that a lot of Afghan refugees, they entered India, and Indian government is ready to give them a refugee status. So what will happen? The demand for jobs in India, obviously with the influx of large number of Afghan refugees, the demand for jobs will increase certain level. But do you really think that demand for jobs will increase as the supply increases? Because the supply increase in supply will be much more than the demand. So obviously in that case, the wages are bound to depress. So it will not be a favorable position for the workers. First thing. Secondly, you mentioned about the Haryana. So I'm sorry for quoting that 50,000 or 30,000 because I might not be referring to the very latest article. So, but that was not my point. I particularly wanted to mention that if the government hypothetically, eliminates all those barriers, then it will happen that people from every nook and corner of the country will be, encouraged to come and take their jobs in Haryana. So what will happen? It will obviously flood the Haryana, economy of Haryana, and it will more number of laborers will enter, and obviously it will, in that case, the supply increases, whereas the demand it almost remains same or a negligible increase in demand. This will depress wages, and there will be a flooding of laborers. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Team Affirmative, you can conclude your points.
Sure. Let me conclude this by quickly saying that first, I'm from Haryana, and the only reason the Gurgaon became the golden goose of Haryana because of there are no barriers to there. And second, I was just mentioning about the economics point of view, and what you mentioned the Afghanistan point. That's not the labor immigration. That's the reason is different. And concluding our whole argument, I want to ask everyone that imagine this. You're deprived of reaching your dream, not because you're not capable, but because men with power decides that because of my gender, my race, and my ethnicity, I can't even apply. So it has nothing to do with my capability. So we have come today here because of D2C, the platform open for all. There are no barriers. And if it wasn't for it, we maybe not be applying here and not be eligible to do that and not having this discussion. This sounds just unjust. We as a society need to go from social equality to equity, and that can only happen when there are no barriers. And we rest our case. Thank you.
Thank you, Team Opposition. Team Affirmative, concluding points, please.
Yeah. So firstly, I would like to thank the organizing committee for giving us a chance to present our views before the committee at hand. I would also like to thank all the members present for putting forward their respective views. Team Panthers would like to conclude by mentioning that even if it so happens that there is an increase in, let's say, the demand because of the prices going down, as far as the unskilled labor force is concerned, an organization only has a particular limit to the number of people they can employ. Just for the fact that the prices or the wages are going down doesn't mean that they will employ more than required, firstly. Secondly, speaking from the unskilled labor point of view, even if adequate investment is being done, and even if significant, let's say, government regulations and policies are being made, we need to understand that the unskilled labor force has got very little or negligible bargaining power. In spite of the fact that many trade unions are present, there is a problem to consider if it so happens that there is an increase in the labor supply, because eventually the prices or the wages are bound to go down, irrespective of whether anything is being taken care of or not. So thank you.
Thank you, teams. We will be announcing the results after the second debate. The second debate that we have for today as part of the semi-final round is on the topic, Immigration Increases Budget Deficit and Government Debt. This debate will take place between Team Surplus and Team Zero REs, who are Team Opposition and Team Affirmative respectively. This debate will commence at 10:40 a.m. Can these teams please rename themselves as instructed and switch on their cameras? Teams, are you prepared to begin? Team Surplus and Team Zero REs.
Just a kind of clarification, if I could get. Am I properly visible and audible?
Yes, you are.
Second thing, like I would be the first speaker from the affirmative, so I would like to give myself a countdown. Okay, so that was the point.
Yes, I will be giving you a countdown.
No, I would give myself a self countdown. Okay.
Judges, we are now ready to begin. Our timekeeper for this debate is Neha Mighty. Participants will be notified when there is a minute of speaking time left and when their time is up by the way of chat box. We will now commence the debate. Speaker 1, Team Affirmative, you have the floor.
Okay, so I'll be beginning my speech at the count of 3, 2, 1. Growing crops on a small farm area with all modern techniques reaps better income for the farmer and reasonable cost to the consumer. But the same field very soon becomes barren and unfit for any crop. Good morning to one and all present here. The impact of immigration on the economics globally can best described by the aforesaid analogy. Where the numbers of bulk surveys shine with the glitter of development, they hide in them the miseries of the native population. A very logical statement which promptly can show the dark shadow which the data of my opponents cast on the pockets of population in a country is that immigration lowers wages for those at the bottom of economic scale. Lower wages increases unemployment definitely for the natives who are not ready to do a job at lower pay than previous, along with inflation combined. The introduction of the immigrants in the labor force decreases wages and increases consumption, spending, investing, and this is what in particular shines in the GDP and the economic growth. Therefore, if we look carefully at those glittering data of economic growth, then they do not portray the growth of population or country, whereas they simply suggest that this growth is forced growth and it is not stable, for it is subjected to the behavior of immigrants whose employment is not at all stable. Let me put it like this, that the government of a country is actually under an increased budget deficit because it needs to spend on the welfare of natives as well as immigrants. But the immigrants provide a temporary pump in the economics of a country. Henceforth, the government is unable to sense the debt which it along with its people are subject to, and moreover, the government globally do not spend ideally for the welfare of immigrants, which hides the budget deficit. An analogy which shall better explain this is the pump and dump theory of share market, where the pump in the prices of a share is accompanied by sudden dump and total crash of the market. Immigration and a raise in local population put higher pressure on social services such as schools, hospitals, roads, and public transport. However, my opponents may argue that the increased pressure is accompanied by increased tax collection. However, that is true theoretically, for the immigrant society pay much less tax than the natives because they are generally involved in lower wage labor. Moreover, in all the countries, the government shows less concern for the immigrant population and does not spend the idle amount, which leads to a show of reducing budget deficit. Whereas if spent idly, then the government is sure to face more debt and increase in budget deficit, which has also been predicted by economists several times. This forum would surely agree to the fact that the parts of the countries where immigration takes place, the living standards decreases. Even in the developed countries like the US and the UK, the living conditions of the natives and immigrants is very poor. This simply reflects that the welfare which the population deserves does not reach them, and the government too does not care about it. Now, if this is the condition globally, then how can one argue that the immigration is not increasing the budget deficit and government debt? It is just that no one cares to spend the idle amount. Henceforth, the government gets butter on its finances without paying the idle pay, and hence the budget deficit gets hidden by the pseudo growth.
Speaker, can you please turn on your camera? You can now continue.
Okay. On a level platform, if the government and immigrants perform their roles ideally, then according to Winthrop University's research in immigration, immigration would be the most negative blow to a nation. It will simply raise individuals at the cost of state, leading to increasing budget deficit and government debt. While countries show prosperous numbers and my opponents argue on them, let's not forget to acknowledge the fact that the whole process of immigration is being carried out on an unlevel platform. The scenario can be better described as that immigration in a country is like a steroid. It's just like a steroid to its wealth, which grows the economic muscle, neglecting and masking the real loss of its human resource, keeping aloof to the fact that ultimately it shall lead to high increase in the budget deficit and government debt. That's all from my arguments. Thank you very much.
Speaker 1, team opposition, you have the floor now. Do we have speaker 1 with us?
I think I've renamed myself wrongly. I apologize for that. And yeah, so may I commence my speech?
Yes.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, stop. Good morning, respected judges, eminent professors, and my dear friends. I am Abhiraj Chauhan, and it is my proud privilege to represent my college OP Jindal today. I shall speak against this vehement claim that immigration increases budget deficit and government debt. World is a global village today, and you can't have globalization without human immigration. People have to cross border to offer their labor, their investment, and their ideas in market to make use of opportunities in their home countries, which are not available in their home countries. And why not? Why should they not do it? The world is better connected thanks to the ever-changing technology and communication. And globalization is not a thing of today. It always existed. People and goods have moved along Silk routes like Silk Route of millennia. Uninhibited globalization should allow labor to allocate itself far more efficiently without any kind of skepticism. Skepticism about immigration would mean living in a closed economy with limited resources. To say immigration increases debt would be putting the world economy on a reverse gear. Why would a country allow immigrants unless it is mutually beneficial? 51% immigrants come for employment, which is a financial objective. Unless the benefit to the receiving country is more than their cost, why would the host country then allow immigrants? Immigrants increase the budget deficit and government debt. This seems intuitive, but it's far from true. Take the example of America. Many tend to come to America as young adults. They do not avail the benefits of private schooling. Agreed. Also, the retirement benefits will be availed by them, will come to them after many decades. An increase in immigration will grow federal spending, but those spending increases will be more than offset by increase in tax receipts due to two factors. The total population will rise, meaning more workers and more taxpayers, and immigrants will be more likely to be working on the books and paying the taxes they owe. Immigration in the United States have about a net zero effect on government budgets. This is a fact which has been analyzed through different stats. Critics have claimed that immigrants take on jobs, lower down wages, and drain too much tax money because of social services. However, what they do not realize that the jobs immigrants take are the jobs which require the skill that the host country may not have, or most citizens in the host country do not prefer to take. Immigrants fill up these jobs, lighten the load of producers and consumers, and results in gain in economic welfare. It is a fact that immigrants are a source of low-cost labor, but these cost reductions are eventually passed on to the consumer. So host country citizens benefit from these as well. The goods produced through the efforts of immigrant workers can also generate additional profits, as the goods can be sold at lower price, hence more the purchasing power of people and lesser the need for public expenditure and fiscal deficit. Immigrants tend to be younger than the population they are receiving, country with a larger proportion of them being of working age. This means of stabilizing the aging population of
Speaker
economic...
1, time is up. Speaker 2, team
global
affirmative.
knowledge.
You now have the floor. Speaker 2, team affirmative.
Hello. Am I clearly visible and audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, fine. So I'll start. Respected jury members, my dear friends, I'd like to add to my points what my friend Rahul has put forth. Immigration has always been an issue of financial distress for many developed and developing countries across the globe. According to the conservative group Heritage Foundation study, USA was hit with a financial burden of $54 billion a year only for illegal immigrants crossing from Mexico border. Let alone the world, just a portion of immigrants in USA cost such a whopping distress on taxpayers' money. Imagine how much amount of remittance might run into. Talking about immigration, immigration is majorly of two types, legal and illegal. My friend today have quoted about data of taxes paid by legal immigrants of those with citizenship or visas. Let me remind them that for every one legal immigrant, there are millions who come without legal documents and consume the resources of citizens and enjoy services on the hard-earned taxpayers' money. To run down into exact figures of the same, according to a study by the Reuters UK alone recently had an influx of approximately 2 million illegal immigrants, while legal citizenship was granted to just 100K in the concurrent times, clearly showing that for every one legal immigrant, there are 20 illegal immigrants just in the UK, which has a very strict border control after Brexit. So if my friends are expecting to portray the balance sheets of the legal immigrants, let me remind them that they are forgetting the major chunk of unregistered illegal ones. The scale of this problem is the major issue which hits several countries in the world today. Several decent countries have to spend a huge chunk of hard-earned money of their citizens on setting up asylum camps, arranging food, medicines, and all amenities of those people who are not even a part of their country. All of this takes a hit on the economy and creates a deficit and debt. On to my second point, talking about economical losses, we must also take into consideration the human resource. Human resource plays a major role in economies, and there is certainly a loss in this sphere due to immigration. According to the official data in EU alone, unemployment rates have gone up from 6.7% to 9.1% in the recent decade of 2009 to 2019. That is before COVID. The whopping increase in unemployment rate has been majorly attributed to illegal immigration from the countries like Syria, Iraq, who have been constrained by war. This influx of a huge immigration has increased the unemployment rate across Europe, which in turn has affected people's per capita income. According to the data released by the World Bank, the increase in France's per capita income was around 3.214% in 1990, but declined to 1.793% in 2008 and 0.754% in 2016. All of this was attributed due to an influx of illegal immigration from around the globe. Standing alone, the per capita income went from 1.7% in 2011 to minus 0.171 to 2012. Let me remind you that this was the same period when the Syrian war was starting and in the first phase, and Europe was facing a maximum influx of immigrants. These data clearly prove that immigration has heavily affected the human resource of the country. by degrading per capita income, increasing unemployment rate, and indirectly taking a hit on citizens'
Speaker
lives
two,
and
time
countries'
is up.
economies. Thank you.
Right. Speaker 2 from team opposition, you have the floor now. Speaker 2, team opposition, are you here with us today?
I would
Right. Speaker 1, would you like to continue?
with all due respect, I think she's having some internet issues.
All right. Okay.
I just confirm with my teammate. Do excuse me.
Yes. Speaker 1, team opposition. Are you prepared to begin? Speaker, you are inaudible. Right. Would Speaker 3 want to take the place of Speaker 1?
I'm really sorry to inform, but my speaker 3 is not available due to.
All right.
May.
All right, then we'll have to move on to the rebuttal round. Team affirmative, would you like to begin your rebuttal round, please?
Yeah, I like to begin our rebuttal round. First of the lot, I like to ask my worthy opponent that he stated that immigrants helps to produce goods cheaply, but let me remind him, China is the world's factory. It does not have any legal or illegal immigration at that level which US has and produces much cheaper goods than US. So I'd like to know what point he has to put forth on that behalf.
May I? Okay, with all due respect, Speaker 2, let me remind you that the functioning of China is completely different from how the US country is functioning. Their policies are very different, and also now like in present times we have just seen the US-China trade war, and we have seen how exactly both the powers are working at each other at their own level. Though answering to your question, which you asked how the goods have been produced cheaply, let me also remind you one more thing. China has a very stringent policy regarding their produce. They have been also mistreating their laborers and their workers very badly, and this actually have been proved through certain datas and certain articles which have been provided from the Chinese workforce.
All right, team affirmative, do you have more points?
Yeah, thank you. Whatever points you have put forth, I'll very thankfully. But I like to state that you did not quote any of the things related to immigration. Coming to a second point, you told that people who immigrate to other countries don't take jobs of other people. But to say logically, how could that happen? Because if you settle in a country and do not take a job, how could that happen? Okay. Logically. And one more thing, the data I presented upon, there has been an increase in unemployment rate across Europe and across USA since immigration has increased after the Syria war. To be exact, what I have presented forth. What's your point on that?
I'm sorry, but can you just repeat your question? I didn't get it.
You stated that there is not a hit on people due to there is not a hit on job opportunities for people of the native countries due to immigration in your speech what you gave forth. But according to the data, there has been an increase in unemployment rates across USA and Europe. To be exact, it has gone up from 6.7% to 9.1% in UK alone in the year 2009 to 2019, that is before COVID. That is most attributed due to the immigration as stated in several studies. What's your take on the same?
Firstly, I would like to remind Speaker 2 that the proposition we are discussing today is immigration having an effect on the budget, the government budget, and the debt which is being created. Not the problems that the immigrations have been coming here in a particular country and and having the economic conditions. I do agree that there are certain things which do occur when immigration does take place. But then have you also looked at the good side of immigration? Have you looked at the GDP of a country? Because if I remember in one of the years, not misquoting anything, GDP had risen in USA, I think by 5%, not by 5% in USA, because of the amount of immigration which was taking place. So I'll suggest speaker too that you also look at the positive aspects of the of immigration having effect on the economy, because immigration is also about connectiveness. It is also about how people gel with each other and how different communities interact. Thank you.
Is speaker one from team opposition here with us?
So,
yes, please take the floor.
Respected judges, faculty members, and my dear friends, I, Sanjana Jain, today have the proud privilege here to be representing my college, OP Jindal. The topic for today of our debate is, does immigration lead to government debt and budget deficit? And I will be speaking for the motion. Here we all know that immigration is the intentional movement of an individual to a destination country of which they do not possess citizenship. This search for greener pastures has been there in man since he was a nomad. Resources are scarce. Immigration leads to population growth, which makes the task allocation of scarce resources more difficult because it creates more competing ends. Thus, immigration leads to bad economic outcome. Let me share it in simple words. If there are more people living in the same amount of land with the same amount of natural resources, there will be fewer resources and land available per person, and thus lesser wealth per person. Lesser the income and wealth per person, lesser will be the revenue collected through the taxes, and more will be the budgetary deficit. Immigration undoubtedly leads to overburdened infrastructure. State and federal governments often support immigration, but ignore the cost of such growth. Let me give you an example. There is a nationwide shortage of public hospital beds, yet population growth due to immigration adds to the demand on hospitals. Similarly, the nation's roads cannot cope with the existing amount of traffic, let alone more traffic. All
right, time is up. Does Team Affirmative have any rebuttal points to that? All right, we will be now giving the floor to conclude points. Team Affirmative.
Does the Team Affirmative have some time left for the rebuttal?
Team Affirmative, you can now conclude your points.
So, talking about the conclusion, as I would go, the points were raised by the speaker to in opposition that GDP increases and many other things happen because of immigration. We are totally agreed to the fact, but if you go for the per capita income, then in US also it has decreased. Talking about the other points which were put by the opposition that cheap labor is available, then because of that cheap labor to the Native Americans mostly in the agricultural and the construction field, they are suffering, and that has been released by one of the major colleges of major Ivy League colleges in one of the researches. So we cannot say that immigration and cheap labor is doing anything good. Then if we say that because of cheap labor the GDP is increasing, then let me tell you that it's the country's native population which is getting affected by it, and therefore the country is getting affected improper. So if we are just putting up the fact that because of the GDP increase the debt is not increasing, then it's totally wrong, because in fact the human resource is going inside debt, which is the greatest debt which a country can afford to have. And secondly, the country is not in the control of its own population. It is going in the control of some population which is totally unaware of the country's geographical and political condition. Thank you so much.
Team Opposition, your concluding points.
Yes. Everywhere immigrations have enriched and strengthened the fabric of life, we have to understand they're not a problem, but a solution to many economic causes. Especially when looked at a country's GDP, as stated before, a rise in immigration led to a rise in GDP. But it is agreed, a population boom in any country may cause certain problems, be it economic. But on an international sphere, it can be dealt with. So let me remind you something, that the greatest economic need is a human. Without a human, an economy cannot function. Every human being in and functioning economy is important, and he can provide the best economic need for each and every country when combined collectively. Thank you. And Speaker, opposition justice case.
All right, thank you, speakers.